time. We are so glad that you guys are all here. Even with that 2-week break, it looks like we've got a lot of people here, so we're excited about that. You might be looking at the notes thinking, chapter 10 and 12, that does not make sense. We are going to change things up a little bit just because Pastor Jeremiah and I will be out of town next week. So we are teaching chapters 10 and 12 tonight, and then next week we will do chapters 9 and 11. So a little bit out of order, but it shouldn't mess up with the content. It'll still be good content. So we're going to open up in prayer. Pastor Jeremiah is trying to do a little bit of dual work right now. He's trying to get that live stream up. So I will go ahead and open us up in prayer. So thank you, Lord, for bringing us all here today. Thank you for this beautiful weather, a wonderful day. I pray that Pastor Jeremiah and I are able to speak what you want us to speak and leave out anything that doesn't need to be said. And God, I pray that everyone that's here today can open their hearts and take in what you have given us. Thank you, Lord, for bringing us here today. Amen. I always forget to breathe when I talk. So sorry about that. All right.
So I just talked to Alexa the other day about that, actually, and I always wonder sometimes what it looks like when she's at school and she's teaching, and especially when she was pregnant with Micah, she would get winded really, really quickly. Any woman who's been pregnant, you can probably relate with that, but she would get winded really quickly, and then on top of that, she's also forgetting to breathe while she's talking, and then with a new group of students every year, it's like this whole new wave of like, I'm nervous, I'm excited because there's new people that I get to meet and teach. And so you put all that together and she'd turn purple while she was teaching, I'm sure of it. But Micah came out okay, so I guess it's not that big of a deal. So we're going to start off tonight with chapter 10, Boundaries and Children. And I recognize it's a little ironic that the two youngest teachers who have one child who's under the age of 2 are the ones teaching boundaries and children. But I feel like there's a perspective that we can bring forward, and some of that is because, funny enough, childhood was so close for us that we can actually remember back to some of the ways that we were brought up. We were reared up as children. And then also talk about some of the ways that we plan on implementing things that were part of our childhood and things we tend to avoid and plan to avoid anyway. But the point is, we're teaching out of the book Boundaries. So the point is, with that, whether you've done it all, whether you haven't done it all, we can go through these topics in the book together. Amen? Amen. Okay, so the first point we're going to cover today is why boundaries matter for children. Children need boundaries to develop self-control, responsibility, and respect for others. Without them, they are more likely to struggle with entitlement and poor relationships later in life. Point that I want everybody to take away is that you discipline the child now and you just might survive adolescence. The sooner we teach responsibility, limit setting, and the delay of gratification early on, the smoother our children's lives will be. The later we start, the harder we and they have to work. One thing I want to point out, and again, I'm speaking to most people here already have raised their children. But you recognize this, and you might have some grandkids, so you can instill some truths into your children that are raising their kids. The important note here is that the later you start is what's highlighted, which means it's never too late to start. Even if your grandkids are 14, 15 years old, if your grandkids are, throwing themselves on the ground, throwing a tantrum like Micah does, it's not too late to start. There is no lost cause. These children, they need foundation, they need structure, they need people they can depend on. They need a schedule sometimes that they can depend on. They need to know that their actions have consequences, both positive and negative. And protecting them from all of the consequences of their decisions is doing them no favors. If you protect them from the consequences of their poor decisions their entire life, when they grow up, what's going to happen? Well, they're going to be an adult that is rude. They're going to be an adult that's self-centered. They're going to be an adult that throws a tantrum every time somebody tells them the word no. And as we're learning in this book, the word no is going to happen a lot in life, so they got to get used to it.
In the book actually quoted, and I'm sure you guys have heard this before, it said, you can't be friends with your children when they're children and friends with them when they're adults. You have to choose. Do you want to be friends with them when they're children and not be friends with them when they're adults? Or do you want to be a parent to them when they're children, and then you get to be friends with them when they're adults. So I thought that was really good. And I think the most important, crucial, at least what studies have shown in early childhood development, that most crucial development time for them is that first 3 years. And it can be really, really hard to discipline and be consistent, but it leads to wonderful children going up, and it makes your life a whole lot easier after those 3 years because they've got the foundation that they need.
Absolutely. Okay, so number 2, the parent's role. Parents function as external boundaries, providing structure and guidance until children can govern themselves. Around age 6, give or take, people can start allowing their children to make their own age-appropriate decisions. Over time, parents gradually transfer responsibility to the child to help launch them into adulthood. What this might include is helping to pick out their outfits, weigh in on small things like which restaurant we're going to go to tonight or which park we're going to go to today. They get to feel heard, but at the same time, mom and dad are still in control of the situation. Does that make sense? You don't always have to give them what they want, but talking with them, like I said, makes them feel heard and a part of it all. And then number 3, what children need to learn. Kids must learn that their actions have consequences. Again, both positive and negative consequences, and that they are responsible for their choices. This includes respecting others' limits and practicing self-control. By the time children leave home, they should have the following convictions and understandings. My success or failure in life largely depends upon me. Now, as Christians, this is a Christian-based book. However, a lot of secular folks will read this book. We understand as Christians that our success comes from God, but we still have to submit to God's will for our life, right? We understand that blessings that we have, opportunities that we have, God blessed us with those things. However, that does not mean we get to go through life haphazardly and say, well, God will either bless me or he won't. Do we understand the difference? Okay, all right. Next thing that a child needs to understand before they leave home. Though I am to look to God and others for comfort and instruction, I alone am responsible for my choices. I think of Adam and Eve in the garden. Adam literally walked with God. He was in daily communion with the Father. He had a personal relationship with his very creator, right? God still gave him free will. God still gave Adam and Eve both free will. And what they did with that free will was not a good thing ultimately for them, but God still gave them their free will. And that kind of leads us into the next thing. Though I'm deeply affected by my significant relationships throughout my life, I can't blame my problems on anyone but myself. The decisions that I made got me to where I am at today. Does that mean that there are no outside impacts? Absolutely not. So many of us start with some setbacks. But I heard somebody say that it's actually an advantage to know that you have these setbacks because it lets you know how much harder you have to work in order to catch up and or get ahead. It's all about perspective about these situations. Next thing. Though I will always fail and need support in some areas, I can't depend on over-responsible individuals to constantly bail me out of spiritual, emotional, financial, or relational crises. Jason, you are a prime example of somebody who had a lot of setbacks in life, somebody who started with life against them, but you actually became the person. Instead of looking to other people to bail you out, you became the person that other people at times looked for help from. And I think you either made a post or you shared it one of the other days, but you finally looked at some of your coworkers and said, you need to stop using me. It was a good deal. And parents, when you're constantly bailing your children out, you're hurting them. And same thing goes with grandparents, and I know it's hard for grandparents because y'all want to spoil your grandbabies. You have a completely different relationship than you did with your own children. But when you're constantly bailing somebody out, whether that be a family member, a coworker, a friend, or a neighbor even, you're not helping them. You're hindering them. They have to learn through different processes of life how to handle these things on their own.
One of the biggest ways that we can bail people out is financially, and the book touches on the financial aspect of this. So there were these parents, they had a daughter who was a senior in high school, and what they did is they gave her an allowance for the quarter, so 3 months. And they gave her this allowance for the entire quarter, and she spent it all within the first, or spent almost all of it within the first month and a half. She was treating her friends, she was buying some clothes, and then she realized, oh, I got 2.5 or 1.5 more months left. I need to slow down on my spending. But what that did was it allowed her to understand how to budget. So that way when she did go to college and she was having to budget in college, she had a better understanding. So if the parents just bailed her out and said, well, let me just give you some more money, they're not helping her learn how to develop that skill. And I think the same thing goes for our spiritual lives. If we bail people out spiritually, if we say, well, if you're going to live in my house, and this is for older children, I believe, and this is kind of coming from the way that I grew up, because obviously I don't have any grown children, but if you live in my house, you have to go to church, right? You set that boundary. That doesn't mean that because they're coming to church every Sunday that they're going to grow closer to God. It has to be a decision that they make, right? I still think you bring your children to church every Sunday. I mean, you will see Micah here pretty much every Sunday and every Wednesday. But you have to understand that that's a decision that they have to make for themselves. You cannot make those decisions for them. So,
Again, God gave us free will. We can't take it away. God gave us the free will, which means parents can't take away the free will of their kids to a certain extent. Like I said, if my 2-year-old's throwing a fit and says, I don't want to go to church, I'm saying, I don't care, get in the car. Or I'm going to put him in the car. You get what I'm saying? Next, I want to address types of boundary problems. It says in kids in the chapter, but ultimately this applies to literally everybody on the face of the planet. There are certain types of boundary problems that people have depending upon if they were raised in a household or in an environment with appropriate boundaries and teachings of those boundaries. So children may become, or people may become, overly compliant. That's the, as we talked about earlier, the kinds of boundary problems in chapter 3 or 4. I'm trying to remember now. One of the two. 3 or 4. Children or people may become overly compliant, overly controlling, or resistant to discipline, depending on how boundaries are taught. Each pattern reflects a lack of balanced boundary development. Good child rearing involves both preventative training and practice and correctional consequences. It is necessary to use all kinds of boundary enforcements in order to find that healthy balance. One of the things that the book talked about was that there's discipline. Discipline looks to the future, right? You would look at somebody, for example, who goes to the gym all the time, right? That person, if they have a schedule, they're in the gym at 5 o'clock every single morning, or if you're a normal human being, 7 o'clock every single morning, you would say that person is disciplined. That person might be doing it for, this reason, that reason, or the other reason, but the bottom line is that person is disciplined. And in the long run, there is a goal or a target of that person that helps them to maintain that discipline. That person is looking to the future, right? The book also talks about punishment. Punishment looks at the past. Punishment seeks to cause shame. Punishment seeks to isolate. Punishment seeks to make you feel bad. Punishment does all these negative things in our mind and in our body, and we have a tendency to kind of conflate the two. You see, if I were to, let's pretend Micah is 7 years old, okay? And I have told him more than one time, don't grab the dog's tail and yank on it, because someday you're going to grab the wrong dog's tail and that dog's going to bite you, okay? Micah goes 5 minutes later and goes and grabs our golden retriever's tail, and she yelps and runs across the room. She didn't bite him, but I'm going to go ahead and look at what Micah did in the past and I'm going to discipline him so that it does not happen again in the future. Does that make sense? If I discipline my child, in that sense, it's appropriate. Does that make sense, everybody? Okay, cool. I'm seeing some head nods, so it makes me feel good. I appreciate that. Next thing is how boundaries are taught. Boundaries are primarily learned through consistent consequences rather than words alone. That is huge. Experiencing sowing and reaping helps children connect actions with outcomes. Allow children to practice. Trial and error is how we learn. This is the discipline versus punishment. I know I just talked about that, so I'm going to skip over it. You see, there is a righteous correction and an unrighteous one. This doesn't necessarily mean that the same response is always going to be the righteous one or the unrighteous one. Take Jesus driving out merchants and money changers, for example. In this instance, he is responding to something wicked. And if we were to have the same response that he had to something minor or even accidental, I don't think we would necessarily be falling under righteous correction. I know this is aimed at rearing up children, but we must also understand that we may be the ones who need boundaries taught to us. Know when to be hard on yourself is what I wrote down. Know when to be hard on yourself. Going back, there's a righteous correction and an unrighteous one. See, there may be a time where Micah does something minor, and that minor is not worthy of a spanking. That minor is worthy of a timeout or taking a toy away. But there may be a time, for example, if he decides to run in the middle of a road on a 40-mile-an-hour road, especially around a blind corner, I need to do what I need to do to get his attention. And then I need to sit down and explain that to him. This is why this is happening. If you do not listen to me, if you do not obey me in this regard, you could quite literally die. I'm doing this to protect you, not to harm you. There are certain instances that would require one form of discipline and certain instances that would require another. You have to understand what the threshold is for each of those things. And the same thing goes with your job at work. There's some things that you'll do that will be a verbal warning. There's some things that you'll do, it's straight to a written warning. There's some things that you do, it's straight to, you're fired, get out of here. We have different levels of consequences for different actions. And then the importance of consistency. This is one of the most important things on this entire list. Consistency is what helps more than almost anything to help them understand what's allowed and what's not allowed. See, one day I might look at my son and say, don't pull the dog's tail, and the next day I watch him do it and then I chuckle. What has my son learned? Absolutely nothing. That's not okay. Consistency in enforcing rules and consequences builds security and clarity for children. Inconsistency leads to confusion and weakens the learning process. If we don't follow through with a consequence, our children will learn that our word means nothing. So not only have they not learned anything, but they've also found out mom or dad or grandma or grandpa or auntie or uncle or brother or sister or whatever relationship you have with them, they just found out you're a liar. They just found out they can't trust you. They just found out that something that you say doesn't necessarily mean anything. Consistency and following through on your word makes sense.
And that just sparked an idea. So if we're not consistent in our discipline, then if we're teaching our children about God and we're teaching them about the Bible, if they can't trust what we're saying about discipline because we're not consistent, then how are they going to trust what we're telling them about God and what we're teaching them in the Bible? You know, that can affect their salvation. So the importance of consistency, I don't even think it's hit hard enough in the book. It is so important. And I saw it day after day when I was teaching middle school. These kids do not have, they don't have guidelines. They don't have routines is the word that I'm looking for. They don't have that consistency, and it wrecks every single aspect of their life. They struggle to self-regulate. They struggle to have communication with their peers. They struggle in every aspect of their life. They start, from what I've seen, I would see them in 6th grade and then see their progress through 8th grade. And I had kids who, when they were living in a house that didn't have that consistency, and you can tell, and especially with talking with parents, but what would happen is these 6th graders who could start out real innocent, they would fall in with the wrong crowd, and even in middle school, they were doing drugs and having sex. I saw it. I witnessed it. So the importance of consistency, staying true to your word. If you say something, go through with it. So if you say, if you do this, we're not going to go to the movies, but Jeremiah and I are like, well, we really want to go to the movies. I know they did that. Let's go to the movies anyway. It can wreck all sorts of things, not just that one moment. So you have to stay consistent. It's very, very important.
Some of you may be familiar with my dad's recurring joke about his recliner. The only reason that I know it's not a joke is because it's been happening for years and years and years. Consistency has taught not just me, but all of my siblings, all of his close personal friends, all of his grandkids, that recliner is his. You can enjoy it when he's not there, but when he walks in through the door, all of us, he's been consistent because anybody who's sitting in that chair will stand up immediately when he gets in through the front door. Yeah, it's not a joke, okay? That's his recliner. Okay, 7, balancing grace and truth. Healthy parenting, healthy relationships, healthy friendships, healthy marriages, healthy family relationships, in relationships with your coworkers and your bosses requires both love and limits working together. Too much of either leads to either permissiveness or harshness. We have to have both things. Just like God is both love and justice, we need to have both love and limits. You see, we understand that God is love, quite literally, God is love, but God is also a just God, and he does not give up one for the sake of the other. He fulfills both things. In the same regard, we are expected to do that in all of our relationships in our life. I know this topic is specifically aimed, again, at children, but it really does apply to every relationship we have in our entire life, even one with ourselves. Let's look at ourselves for a moment. I need to give myself both love, grace, and limits, truth, guidelines, perspectives, ways I need to live my life. I need to set boundaries upon myself, which is a whole other chapter, so I'm not going to get into it. But the bottom line is, if you are too permissive with yourself, you're going to walk right into a trap again and again and again and again. And if I'm too harsh with myself, then I'm going to fall so deep into a depression and isolation that I'm going to feel like there's no way out. There has to be a balance between grace and truth. Now we get into age-appropriate boundaries. Younger children need more structure and control, while older children should be given increasing freedom tied to responsibility. Boundaries should grow with a child's maturity. Ages 0 to 6, helping a child understand safe boundaries. Parents are the controllers in this environment. Except maybe you might ask your child, do you want to play with this toy or do you want to play with this toy? Again, age-appropriate responses. Ages 6 and up, increasing decision-making with your child. And then 6 to 11 is teaching responsibility. You didn't grab your coat like I told you, so you're just going to be cold. Sometimes that's what they need. They need to understand consequences. I told you not to stand outside in the rain for 25 minutes, but you did it actually for 35 minutes, and now you're sick. These are the consequences of life. You should have listened to me. Well, 11 plus is letting go and seeing if they fly. The more consistent you are with these things, the younger the letting them go and seeing if they fly can come. It doesn't necessarily have to be 11 and up. You could have the most responsible 10-year-old in the world, and they could have a lot more freedoms than the 15-year-old down the street, right? I had a family, I went to school with them. The brother and sister were twins, and they had an older sister in the year. She was 2 grades ahead of us or something like that. And they grew up in a household that was, you turn 18, you're leaving the house. You turn 18, you're gone. I don't care what your situation is. I don't care if you're going to school. I don't care if you're doing sports. I don't care if you're working or not working. Day you turn 18, you're packing your bags and you're getting out of the house, okay? Here was the problem with that. Because I don't necessarily have a problem with that, honestly, as long as you prepare them for the adult world. Here was the problem. Until the age of 18, mom and dad controlled all of their money. Mom and dad controlled all of their schedule. Mom and dad washed all of their clothes. Mom and dad drove them to and from school every single day. They did absolutely nothing to prepare them for the adult world, and then said at 18, get out, you're on your own. They put them in the sink or swim situation without any support, without any hope, and a couple of them drown. Not literally, obviously, but they had no clue how to get a job. They had no clue how to put together a resume. They had no clue. They got their license after they moved out, and the only reason they were even able to do it is because they turned 18 and were able to just go in and test. Before the age of 18, you have to go get your permit and then your license. They had no training for adulthood whatsoever, and at 18, they said, get out, you're on your own. It is so important that there are age-appropriate boundaries. Throughout the years, the boundary line moves. You're still true to your word. You still have the same expectations. You still have the same rules for your house maybe, but the boundary line shifts based upon the age and the appropriateness of said age, okay? Next is modeling boundaries. Children, and again, not just for children. It's such a good chapter. Modeling boundaries. Children, people, learn boundaries by observing you. And I'm just going to shift this and make it more generalized. People learn boundaries by observing you and your behavior. How you live, how you respond, what you react like. Demonstrating healthy limits and respect teaches more than instruction alone. We're about to get into the boundaries and the digital age, this next chapter we're going to cover. But a rule in our house is that Micah doesn't see Alexa or I on our phones unless we are either contacting someone or taking a picture. We don't play games. We don't scroll. It's phone calls, texts, and the occasional email in front of Micah. So when Micah goes to grab a phone, many of you will see this, and it doesn't even have to be a phone. It could be a ball or a box of tissues or a water bottle. He'll put it up to his ear like this. That's what he associates the phone with, is talking on the phone, not a game. You'll see him put it up to his ear. Model your boundaries. We've talked about this before, but you don't know who is watching you, but somebody is. You don't know who sees what you're doing, but somebody sees what you're doing. And the bottom line is they may be framing their boundaries around how you behave. Model boundaries well. And then goal. The goal with children and teaching other people's boundaries, the ultimate goal is for them to develop their own internal sense of responsibility and self-control. Parents shift from being controllers to being guides as this develops. We need to learn when to let go. Holding on will only hurt the children. And now I want to talk about children in the faith. So you could be a 50-year-old and you could still be a child in the faith. In the very beginning of somebody's walk with the Lord, it's going to be a whole lot more hand in hand than maybe 10 years down the road in their relationship with God. Just like you rear up children, we need to, when we introduce somebody to God, if I was a part of introducing somebody to God, help teach them how to walk with the Lord. Help talk to them about some things that maybe should go from their life and leave from their life. But the point is that as time goes on and they grow more mature in their faith, you should be letting go a little bit more often. Does that make sense? Somebody doesn't need a spiritual babysitter for the rest of their life. They might just need some guidance early on in their relationship, and maybe even 20 years down the road, they could ask you a question. I've often said God gave us free will, which means I can't take it away. Well, in the younger years, I can force my child to do something, but we're supposed to mirror a relationship with our children that our Heavenly Father has with us. It's plain as day what's expected of us. It's plain as day that He loves us. And the other thing that is clear as day is that in the end, we get to make the decision to do right or wrong. It's up to us to hear the commands of the Lord and obey or disobey, and then realize the consequences. These boundaries that we develop as we grow older become boundaries we realize we have to set for ourselves in order to become the most productive, healthy child of God that I can become.
All right. We're going to go into questions at the end of this, but we're going to jump into chapter 12, and then once we finish chapter 12, we'll do questions for both chapter 10 and chapter 12. So chapter 12 is Boundaries in the Digital Age, and I have been anxiously awaiting this chapter. I was really honored that they asked me to lead this chapter. And I think one of the reasons they asked me to lead this chapter, one, I'm going to talk a little bit about my background, but one of the reasons I believe is because Pastor Lisa, Pastor Randy, and Pastor Bob even, and even Hazel, they will call me, not Jeremiah, whenever they have technological problems. So in our household, Jeremiah does not mess with the technology. I handle all the technology.
I can unplug it and plug it back in.
You know what? And that works. That works about 50% of the time. So anyway, I was truly honored that they asked me to speak on this. And what's funny is I think it was early on in this year. I was really convicted about social media and just phone usage. So God has been planting seeds in my head, and I think that's one of the reasons they asked if I could kind of share a little bit about my testimony. So I want to share a little bit about my background in technology, and we'll go from there. So I was born in 1999. So I think about our child, both of us kind of had the same childhood. He was also born in 1999. We kind of grew up as technology was emerging. So we kind of were like the guinea pigs, right? So we had, I don't know if you had the same thing. I don't know, we don't talk about this much, so I'm going to learn some things about my husband tonight. I don't know if you ever had a GameCube growing up. His older siblings did. Anyway, those are the kind of things that we did. So we would play on the GameCube. I had 4 other siblings. I remember we each had Nintendo DSs when they came out. And then middle school was when smartphones started to become a little bit more popular. I remember I had an iPod Touch. We had the iPod with the music, and then they developed the Touch, which is like a mini iPad. And, you know, my parents, they were like, wow, this is so cool. There's so many capabilities with it. And truly, I wasn't addicted to technology when I was a kid. I think, it wasn't as addicting, I think, back then as it is now. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit. But really, we were the guinea pigs. We were testing out all this new technology. So I feel like I really got a good feeling of technology and technology use. But even in school, I remember elementary school through high school, we didn't have, like nowadays they have Chromebooks, which is just laptops. Each kid gets their own laptop, even in elementary school. I'll just say right now, I totally disagree with that idea. But when we were growing up, we had computer labs. So like we would have a day where we all go to the computer lab and we're doing research at the computer lab. And we even did that in high school. And I think that was really healthy to have that boundary. There's this space that you get to use the technology. But nowadays you get to go home with your Chromebook. You get to do pretty much whatever you want because we don't have limits on what kids can be looking up on their Chromebooks in school. So anyway, I'm getting off topic, but so I kind of grew up with the emergence of technology, and I remember, I think it was 8th grade year, maybe freshman year, Facebook was a thing when I was in middle school, but then Instagram came out and Snapchat, and that started becoming really prevalent when I was really a teenager. And that's when I started to see some shifts. I'm going to jump forward a little bit. So I always planned on doing business when I went to college. So I got my degree in business, in marketing and finance. And then I worked in accounting, absolutely hated it. I don't know anyone who likes accounting. Does anyone like accounting? No? Okay, I'm so glad we're talking to my people here. Anyway, so I tried all these jobs. Nothing was quite right. And God is really funny because I had a bachelor's degree, and that bachelor's degree allowed me, never thought I would do this. I was working at the college at the time, helping students with figuring out their classes, figuring out transferring to, from Umpqua Community College to university and all that stuff. So I was working there and I realized my favorite part of my job was when I actually got to work with students. And so I remember I reached out to one of my friends who's a teacher, and I said, is there any way I can, get a sub job or, some job at the school? I just really want to work with students. And she said, yeah, send me your resume. So I sent her my resume, they handed it to the principal, and I got a call the next day, and they asked if I could come in for an interview for a teacher position. And I said, oh, that's not what I wanted. I just wanted to help a little bit in the classroom. But Anyway, I went in it was a 6th grade math and science position. I went in for my interview. They were asking me, oh, how do you deal with IEPs and all these things? And I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I am not equipped for this. Anyway, God really helped me through that interview. I ended up getting the job. It was during COVID, so they were able to do, and this is, I think God worked in both of our lives, but it's really cool. I think he made COVID happen just so I could be a teacher. So sorry COVID happened for you guys, but I'm pretty grateful for it. So anyway, it allowed for them to do what they called, I'm forgetting the word, but basically restricted teaching license is what it was. So I had 3 years to get my teaching license, and while I was currently teaching at the school. So I had to get my teaching license. That was part of the contract. So while I was doing school, I looked up how to get my teaching license, and I saw that you can get your teaching license and your master's degree. And I was like, sweet, I'm going to do that, because it was only a couple extra months and only a little bit more money, and I thought, why not? So my master's degree is in educational technology. So that's where I can hear my baby crying right now, and stressing me out a little bit. Sorry about that. So educational technology was my degree. And I'm telling you right now, during this time when I was getting my degree in educational technology, everything was geared around, this is a fantastic tool for kids. There's all of these ways that kids can use technology and build all sorts of skills. And from my education, from all of my learning, from everything that I've done, everything that I've seen, I will tell you right now, I think technology is hurting our children. I think it is one of the tools that the enemy has given children is free reign to all the information out there, right? It is so easy for them to stumble upon things that their eyes should not be seeing. So I've seen it firsthand. I was told during my education, this is fantastic, wonderful. And I do think that there are some tools that are really helpful, but there's too much harm that gets in the way. So that's my experience with technology, and that's kind of what kickstarted everything we're going to go into. But I really like this chapter. It talks about how technology has made it. So the first part says the digital world has no built-in limits. So it says technology, phones, social media, email, removes natural boundaries like time and space. People can reach you anytime, anywhere, which creates constant pressure to respond. Right? You might be feeling that right now. Like you have your phone on you. I'm assuming most of us have our phones. Just out of curiosity, who has a phone on them right now? Oh, there's a couple of us that don't. I love it. I absolutely love it.
God bless you.
Yes. Most people have their phones on them at all times, and we do feel this pressure to respond to them immediately. And the chapter talks about this a little bit, but what ends up happening is if we constantly respond right away, we're teaching people, you can get a hold of me whenever you want and I will respond right away. And I don't think that that's very healthy. It talked about how it used to be you had your work email and then you'd go home and you didn't have to worry about your boss contacting you because they couldn't get a hold of you. And I honestly wish we could go back to that, because I think that would be so healthy to have work-home balance, work-life balance. Separation. Yes, a separation, a physical separation. So if you guys have this book, this chapter is just absolutely phenomenal. The key idea, it says, digital life requires intentional boundaries because none exist by default. So you have to set the boundaries. You have to be intentional about the boundaries that you set with your device. And we're going to get into some ways to set boundaries later on. Part 2 says accessibility versus availability. Just because you can be reached doesn't mean you should always be available. So there's a difference between accessible and available. So being accessible means people have your contact info, right? They have your social media, they have your phone number, they have your email. They have ways that they can access you. Being available is when you choose to respond. So your phone goes off. You do not need to respond immediately. Thank you, Lord, for the time, and that was wonderful. So I think there's an importance, and you know, Jeremiah and I are both in a really interesting position, because Pastor Jeremiah, his job is being available, being on call 24/7. And, I grew up with my dad being a doctor, so I understood he was on call as well. And but he had times where he wasn't on call. So being married to someone who is on call 24/7 has really tested me, I'll tell you that right now. But just because Jeremiah is accessible does not mean he's always available. So the things that we've implemented in our house is he does not bring his phone into the bedroom. Now, sometimes I also don't bring my phone into the bedroom, I should clarify. Sometimes these things get broken, these rules get, there's some leeway there. We don't want to be so strict that we can't have flexibility. But it means that when we go get ready for bed, we end up just talking for 30 minutes in bed before we go to sleep, and it's just a great way for us to connect right before we go to sleep. And then in the morning, what ends up happening is, because we have our phones in the other room, is we end up talking to each other in the morning, and we don't check our phones for an hour. The same thing goes for like when we're having dinner together. If we have family dinners, he has his phone set aside, he'll mute it for then, and then we'll have an hour together where he's not checking his phone, and then after dinner he can check his phone and get to people. So if he's not available or responding right away, just assume that he will get to you eventually. Just assume that he is setting those boundaries. The key idea, you are responsible for deciding when you engage. So technology is really, really important that you know yourself and you know your limits, because there is a problem with constant interruption. So just kidding.
Just before she moves on, I always tell people, if you need me, call me anytime. If I don't answer the phone, I will call you back. I promise.
It's true. So the problem of constant interruption, this is part 3. So notifications, messages, and apps interrupt focus and relationships. So this leads to reduced productivity. So if you're working and you're getting these constant interruptions, it reduces your productivity because you get pulled away. Shallow thinking. You're using your phone to do thinking for you. So it inhibits the creative part of our brain, the part that says, I'm bored, I'm gonna figure out something to do. Instead, what we do is, I'm bored, I'm gonna sit on my phone. And then weakened real life connections. If Jeremiah and I were having dinner, and this is the interaction I'm having with him, or even worse, both of us, hey, did you see that video that I sent you?
Yeah, check that out.
Cool. That's what I see.
Oh,
it looks so dumb. And the problem is, I see it all the time. We don't eat out much, but when we do, I see couples doing this all the time. And then now I'm subbing so that I can work part-time. What a blessing, by the way. So I'll sub a lot at the high school, and I see high schoolers during lunchtime. They're sitting face to face with their peers, and they're all on their phones. I rarely see kids without a phone. And it scares me. And I'm sure you guys have seen it when you go into public spaces. People, I mean, how dumb do we look if you got rid of the phone and we're just staring at our hands? You know what I mean? How dumb would we look? And that's what people do. They're just walking around staring at a device. And it's become a security blanket for a lot of people. I'm in this place where I don't know what to do. I have social anxiety. I'm just gonna pick up my phone, and even if it just means that I'm scrolling through photos, I just need to do something. And I've fallen victim to that too.
You know how some of those phones, instead of a pin, it's like a swipe pattern thing? I've literally seen somebody sitting down on a chair before just doing the swipe pattern to kill time. It's an obsession. It's an addiction.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yes, yeah. Oh, and we're gonna get to that. We're gonna get to that really quickly. But what Susie just said is, people watching movies will still be sitting on their phones, and I'm sure you guys have seen that too. So really, the key idea is that interruptions are boundary violations that you have to manage. You must manage. Here's where we're gonna get into my favorite part: digital overload and emotional health. Too much exposure to digital content can affect these things: mood, because you're comparing and you have anxiety towards that comparison. Identity, seeking validation online. your mental health. You can have burnout and just constant distractions from digital content overload. This is a part that I added. The book did not say this, and you'll see why in a second. Social media and phone usage has become the default method for responding to boredom. If you're sitting alone at a restaurant, like let's say Jeremiah and I go out and he goes to the bathroom, the default is, well, I'll just pull out my phone and scroll because I have nothing else to do. A commercial break on TV. You're watching something and you don't pay for premium, so you have ads, and an ad comes on, and you're like, well, I don't know what else to do. I'm gonna pull up my phone and I'll just start scrolling on my phone. And we do this, we've done this, okay? We have done this. And I'll tell you, we're working on it. So commercial break, time to scroll. Sitting on the toilet, can't do it without my phone. And I'm telling you, it's so common. I added that part, the book did not say that. You know what, that's true. Let's bring it back then. Like, we gotta do something. Like, let's make bathrooms a phone-free zone. So one of the things that the book doesn't talk about, and I checked, the book updated with this digital age before the short form media came out. And if you know what I'm talking about Reels. So you've seen Instagram Reels, Facebook Reels, TikTok has Reels. I never got TikTok. YouTube has Shorts is what they call them. So that was actually a pretty recent development. And psychologists nowadays, they call it vertical media, right? So you're just able to take your phone and you just swipe. You're swiping up to see the next video. It's very much, and we're gonna get into addictions. This is actually on the back. It's very much, a way for your brain to get this jolt of dopamine. Okay, I'm scrolling through videos and it's just this little dopamine fix. Maybe I'll just do it for 10 minutes, but then we become so addicted. This form of media is so addicting, and so I actually did a little bit of research. There was a psychologist who studied the effects of brainwashing. So he was an expert on brainwashing and reversing the effects of brainwashing. And he was talking to someone, it was a podcast. He was talking to someone and he said, I know the effects of brainwashing. I know how to reverse it. I'm an expert on brainwashing. They use me for all sorts of things. I have to be super careful when using social media because this short form video, right? These short videos that you can just watch a little clip and then scroll to the next thing. I can fall, he's an expert in brainwashing, and he said, I fall into the trap of scrolling, and time just flies by, hours go by. And so he said that he just completely removed it from his phone because he knew it was such a temptation. And this is an expert on brainwashing, and he said it truly does brainwash you. So when you're seeing experts like this talking about it in such a way, I just think it is so, so dangerous, and we have to know our limits, and we have to know where we fall. So I'm gonna be completely honest with you. I was 100% an addict to technology. And, normally we think of addiction as addicted to a substance. We're addicted to drugs, alcohol. It kind of expanded into being addicted to gambling, being addicted to sex, being addicted to overworking. But now addiction to technology is so real, and it is so much more common than we think, and it is so, so harmful. So if you turn to the back page, section 5 is addiction and how do you know? So the book talks about addiction, and it talks about how to know if you're addicted. So most people associate addiction with substance abuse. That's what I talked about. These bullet points says, what is addiction? Addiction is overuse of a substance or activity that gives the brain a jolt in the reward center, or it reduces anxiety for a moment, thus reinforcing the use of the behavior. As people continue to overuse technology, they develop a tolerance, meaning they need increasing amounts of it to produce the same result. So what's happening is people, any moment they have downtime, are grabbing their phones and using it for whatever way they want. For me, the problem was scrolling. I would scroll, and I could do that for hours. That was how I spent my downtime. And it's not healthy. we're seeing in teenagers, they're doing studies on teenagers, and I'm sure you guys, I don't know if you guys have heard this, but I'm going to tell you. In past generations, the subsequent generation, so the latter or the after generation would outperform the previous generation. That's how it's been for years, right? This is the first time the current generation, the youngest generation, is now underperforming the previous generation. And the biggest way, so they're trying to figure out, why is this happening? The biggest thing that is happening right now is technology. That's what they're tying it to.
I heard somebody say that there's benefits and there's downsides to having a supercomputer in your pocket. Gentleman said that we can literally know anything in seconds, and we aren't any smarter for it. He tells a story about how, used to, if you had a question, you used to just sit and ponder the question. Or you'd go talk to a family member or a friend or whatever. You'd sit and you would actually think about it, and you would just kind of wonder what the answer is to the question. Now, it doesn't matter really what the question is, almost. I can figure out just about anything I want in 5 seconds, and I will not be a lick smarter for it. This is ultimately the biggest proponent of what Alexa's talking about right now. Why this generation, I'm just going to be really blunt with it, this generation is dumber than the previous generation. It's because you used to have to work to learn something, and now it's at the snap of a finger. You can have whatever information you want.
Yeah. So jumping back into, go ahead. Yeah. Right, exactly. Yeah. So what Susie just said, the algorithm, the way that it's set up, when you're scrolling, it sees what you kind of hold onto, like what you stay and you watch, and then it feeds you more of that stuff, right? But what I've seen is, because most of the stuff that I used to watch was about school, being a teacher, or things like that, or Christian videos. But occasionally, you get a video, and I'm a woman, right? You get a video of some lady dressed in a bikini walking around, and I'm thinking, this in the hands of the wrong person. Think about people who struggle with porn addiction, right? Short form media, when you're scrolling through, can easily infiltrate, and they can put in videos that are a temptation. So that temptation, really, we have to know ourselves and know, when do I need to cut myself off completely from it? And I've reached the point where I have to cut myself off completely from it because I'm an addict. I cannot have, I don't have Facebook on my phone. I don't have Instagram on my phone. I don't even have YouTube on my phone. And just the other day, I had to delete Google off of my phone, which is really inconvenient, but also at the same time so freeing, not having Google. I'm like, I don't know, I can't look that up for you, sorry. It's honestly phenomenal. And the reason I had to delete it, I'm going to talk a little bit about my addiction, since we're in the addiction category. Here's how it started. Back in January, I realized I was scrolling and I saw how much time I was spending on my phones. And I'm not even saying it was as bad as some people's, but even 3 hours a day to me, I was like, that's way too much time that I'm spending on my phone. I'm spending more, my phone became an idol. You know, we talk about biblically, worshiping other things. My phone became an idol for me, because if I'm spending 3 hours on my phone scrolling, then I'm not spending 3 hours in the Word, right? So if I'm spending more time on this and it's not making my life better in any way, then I'm really treating this as an idol. So what it started with was I put time limits on every single app. And it worked for a little bit. I'll be honest with you. It worked for probably about a month, I'd say. And then very quickly, it was add 10 minutes. Because you had that power, you had that capability. And I'm like, what's the harm of 10 more minutes? And then it ended up adding an hour, right? And I was like, well, I just need to finish this video. I'll just add 1 more hour. And so then I got to the point where I said, you know what? I'm deleting all the social media apps from my phone. So I did that. And that worked for about a month. But addicts will constantly see, and I'm telling you, I was an addict and I still am an addict. So it's something that I'm going to constantly have to fight my instincts, and I have to form a new habit. So that habit, I would find ways. I started going on Google, typing in Facebook, and I would go through the browser. I would start scrolling on Facebook through the browser, which I was like, oh, I'm just using it for Facebook Marketplace, because I love Facebook Marketplace, I'll tell you that right now. I had to delete Google off of my phone because I was still finding ways to access social media. I was still finding ways to access the things that were harmful to me and harmful to our relationship. And I wasn't as productive as I could have been, you know. Now I'm like, oh my gosh, I get so much done around the house. I can take a nap in the middle of the day. It's fantastic. But anyway, so that's where I'm at right now. I have no Google on my phone, no YouTube, no Instagram, no Facebook. Am I missing anything? I do, but I only use that for contacting my sister, yeah. So I don't have social media on my phone, and that's the limit that I've had to set for myself, because I know myself, and I know if I have it, I will easily fall back into my old habits. So that's the limit that I've had to set for myself, because I knew I was an addict. Here's what was happening. When technology is being used, it results in withdrawal symptoms. I was having withdrawal symptoms: irritability, insomnia, anxiety, panic, or even loss of appetite, chills, and vomiting. You can have physical reactions to getting rid of or trying to withdraw yourself from your phone. I never got that far, no. It was mostly irritability and like, oh, I just want to grab my phone. What if I'm missing out on something? That FOMO, the fear of missing out. I had that because I was like, well, Instagram is how my siblings and we all talk to each other. You'll find an excuse for everything. So what to look for? This is where I want everyone to think about themselves, think about how they use technology. So what to look for is loss of control. Do you feel the need to grab your phone whenever there's a dull moment? If you do, that might be an addiction, or that is an addiction. Can you go 24 hours without technology? Test yourselves. Put your phone in your nightstand or something. See if you can go 24 hours. You wake up one day to the next following morning. Can you go without touching your phone that entire day? And I don't think a lot of people can. And that does mean it's an addiction. And I know we're going to come up with excuses, like Jeremiah will say, well, I have to for work, and you know, and I understand that there are those limits as well.
Solution: put it in the drawer and turn the ringer on. It's that simple. Somebody needs to get a hold of you, they can. Then you go check it. But the rest of the day, it's put away from me. I'll put it in my car. I'll put it in that little center console, and I'll leave it in there. We go into the restaurant, and I'll put it in her purse or something like that. So it's not even in my control. It's completely away from me. But the ringer's on, so if there is an emergency, I can still get it.
Yeah.
So you mean using it
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're trying to turn our phones into dumb phones is what we're doing, like deleting all the extra fluff. Yeah, but then we realized we come from a generation, we do need Google Maps. I do not want to try without Google Maps. Yeah, so that was the one thing. Yeah, I know we're running out of time, so I just want to quickly get through this, and then I do want to open it up for questions. Another thing you can do to find out if you're addicted is to ask important people in your life if technology is getting in the way of relationships, and be willing to listen without getting defensive. I am so blunt, I will tell Jeremiah if it's getting in the way of his life. Like, I have no problem telling him that. But I had to tell myself it was getting in the way of my life also. Time boundaries in a 24/7 culture. Also, it's not the end of the world if we don't get a hold of you until the next day. You know what I mean? Like, why do we need everything so instantaneous? That's just me adding my 2 cents. Work, school, and social life can blend together digitally. Without limits, people are working too much, resting too little, and losing balance, right? God implemented the Sabbath in the Old Testament, right? And I know that there are exceptions, like when Jesus healed on the Sabbath day. There are things that you should be doing on Sabbath, but what if we take a Sabbath from our phone? You know, once a week, we take a cleanse from technology. The key idea, you must create clear on and off times. So for us, we don't bring our phones into the bedroom. We don't bring our phone to the dinner table. Or if we go out to dinner, we'll turn off our phones so they are not distracting. Practical ways to set digital boundaries. So the chapter offers some strategies. So turning off notifications is a good one. Setting screen time limits, but like I said, for me, that didn't even work because my addiction made me I came up with excuses, essentially. Scheduling device-free time. Creating tech-free zones, like bedrooms or the dinner table. I also encourage making the bathroom a tech-free zone because I'm going to call Jeremiah out right now. He would sit on the toilet for like an hour. Because he brought his phone in there with him. And I know he's not the only one. I know. He's saying that's too much information. That just came to my head, and I felt like I had to say it. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Look like the chairs.
I told you, I am not afraid to call him out. I probably shouldn't have done that so publicly. I was getting too comfortable. Sorry, you guys. But yeah, creating tech-free zones. Deleting social media from your phone. That is the point that I've had to get to. And what we do have is we have a computer. So just like when I was in middle school, we had a computer, a family computer, and that's when I got to go on Facebook or social media. I do that now. And I'm telling you, it is not, like I'll check it and I'm like, I don't want to sit here on my computer. I put it away. It doesn't have the same hold on me as a phone does, right? So putting social media on a computer and deleting it from your phone, you can still stay in touch with people. And I still do, and I'll still make posts on Facebook if I need to, but I rarely do. And my baby's telling me it's time. But anyway, you can put it on a computer. Key idea, we're gonna close it out with this. Structure creates freedom and control. Okay, so Jeremiah's gonna shut off the live stream. I am gonna grab my baby, so that means he's gonna be available for questions, but while he's going back there, does anybody have any questions or comments? Yes, Michelle.